March 1945. A makeshift interrogation room in a recently captured German town. An American intelligence captain slides a photograph across the table to three German officers, a major and two captains, career soldiers with years of combat experience. Do you recognize this man? The photo shows an American general beside a tank, pearl-handled revolvers on his hips, full dress uniform gleaming. The German major leans forward. Patton. Every officer on the Western Front knows that face. He's the most dangerous American commander. The captain slides another photograph across. An older man in a weathered field jacket, no insignia, eating an apple beside a jeep. He looks like a tired supply sergeant. And this man? The Germans study it. One shakes his head. A colonel, perhaps? Staff officer? The American captain allows himself a slight smile. That's also Patton. Taken 2 days ago, 3 miles from where you were captured. The German major stares at the photograph. That cannot be Patton. Why not? Because Patton doesn't travel like that. He makes himself visible. Heavy security, command vehicles, full decorations. Usually, the captain agrees. But sometimes he goes forward in an unmarked jeep. No insignia, no escort, just him and a driver getting as close to the front as possible. The major studies the photo again, then looks up. If this is true, if Patton regularly travels to the front without protection, then he's either the bravest man I've ever heard of or the craziest. The American captain closes his folder. According to the men who serve under him, he's both. This is the story of George Patton, the general who didn't just command armies, he led them from the front. Whilst other generals sat safely behind the lines, Patton appeared where he shouldn't be, doing things no sane commander would do. First, you'll discover why German intelligence became obsessed with tracking Patton, but could never predict where he'd appear next, and why that unpredictability terrified them more than his tactics ever did. Then you'll hear the stories his own men tell, standing calmly on bridges under artillery fire, fixing broken tanks in the mud, shooting back at snipers with his pistol whilst everyone else took cover. And finally, you'll understand what German officers meant when they wrote in their classified reports. Thank God there was only one of him. The research for this comes from declassified German intelligence files, interviews with Third Army veterans, and after-action reports that document a general who repeatedly violated every rule of command safety and somehow, impossibly, survived. Because whilst history remembers Patton for his brilliant tactics and aggressive strategy, the men who fought under him remember something else entirely, a commanding general who refused to ask them to face any danger he wouldn't face first. August 1944. France. Engineers from the 317th Regiment are building a pontoon bridge across a river. German artillery lands every few minutes, sending up geysers of water. Dangerous work. Sergeant Mike Callahan is directing his men when a jeep arrives. An older man in a plain uniform gets out and walks calmly onto the partially completed bridge. "Sir," Callahan shouts, "that's not safe. We're under fire." "I can see that," the man replies, walking to the middle of the bridge. "How long until it's done?" "Maybe 2 hours if the shelling doesn't get worse." "Make it 1 hour. I need tanks across this river by 1600. Callahan is about to argue when he notices the pearl-handled revolvers. His face pales. "General Patton?" A German shell lands 50 yards away. Water sprays over the bridge. Callahan's men duck instinctively. Patton doesn't flinch. He stands there, hands on his hips, watching the engineers work as if he's inspecting a parade ground. "Sir," Callahan says carefully, "you should probably take cover." "I'm fine right here, Sergeant. Your men are working under fire. The least I can do is stand with them." Another shell lands closer this time. Shrapnel pings off the metal pontoons. Patton still doesn't move. The engineers, seeing their commanding general standing calmly in the middle of a bridge under artillery fire, suddenly work with renewed energy. If the old man isn't scared, they won't be either. The bridge is completed in 55 minutes. As Patton's jeep drives away, Callahan turns to his men. "That crazy bastard is going to get himself killed one of these days." "Maybe," one engineer replies, but damn if he doesn't make you want to follow him. The story spreads through Third Army within hours, not second-hand rumour. Men saw it themselves. Their commanding general standing exposed under enemy fire, refusing to take cover, refusing to leave until the job was done. That's when soldiers start to understand Patton isn't commanding from headquarters, he's out there with them. That's the kind of story you won't find in the history books or the Hollywood films. The textbooks tell you about Patton's tactics and strategy. They don't tell you about him standing on bridges whilst German artillery tried to kill him. If you're the kind of person who wants to hear what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling, the moments that define who these men actually were, then you're exactly who we make these videos for. Every week we dig into declassified files, track down veteran interviews, and uncover the stories that got left out of the official histories. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, let me tell you about the German intelligence problem, because whilst Patton was standing on bridges, German officers were trying desperately to figure out where he was. German intelligence officers are obsessed with tracking Patton. They know he's Third Army commander. They know he's brilliant. They know that wherever Patton goes, a major offensive usually follows. But they can't figure out where he is most of the time. He's supposed to be at his headquarters in Nancy, one German intelligence officer complains to his superior, but we have reports of him appearing at the front near Metz, then near Saarbrücken, then back near Nancy, all within the same day. He's travelling, the superior says, but with what? We see no command convoys, no heavy security, just reports of an older American officer in an unmarked jeep appearing randomly at various positions. Are we certain these sightings are actually Patton? Some are confirmed by prisoners, others... The officer shrugs. It seems impossible. A general of his rank travelling with minimal security to forward positions. It violates all military doctrine. The superior studies his maps. Perhaps that's intentional. If we can't predict where he'll be, we can't target him. And if he's actually at the front observing firsthand, he can make decisions faster than commanders who rely solely on reports. It's reckless. It's effective, the superior counters. Third Army advances faster than any other Allied army. Perhaps this is why. They're not wrong. Whilst other generals wait for reports to filter up through channels, reports that take hours or days to reach headquarters, Patton sees the battlefield himself. He talks directly to the men doing the fighting. He makes decisions on the spot. July 1944, Normandy. Lieutenant Charles Wade is directing traffic at a crossroads when an unmarked jeep pulls up. An older man in a plain field jacket leans out. "Where's the front?" Wade points. "About 2 miles up that road, sir, but it's hot up there. Germans are shelling regularly." "Good. That's where I'm going." Wade notices the pearl-handled revolvers. His eyes widen. "Sir, are you General Patton?" "Last time I checked. Carry on, Lieutenant." The jeep roars off towards the sound of gunfire. Wade stares after it, then turns to his sergeant. "Did that just happen?" "Yeah," the sergeant says. He does that a lot. Later that day, Wade's unit receives incoming German artillery. They dive for cover. After the barrage, Wade sees the same jeep racing back from the front, covered in dust and mud. Patton appears completely unconcerned that he just drove through an artillery strike. "That man is going to get himself killed," Wade mutters. "Probably," his sergeant agrees, "but the men love him for it. He's not asking us to do anything he won't do himself." That's the key. Every soldier knows generals are supposed to command from headquarters. They're supposed to study maps and make strategic decisions from safety. They're not supposed to appear at the front in unmarked jeeps driving straight towards enemy fire. But Patton does it anyway. And when he does, something changes in the men who see it. They fight harder. They push further. They take risks they wouldn't take for other commanders, because if the old man with the stars on his collar is willing to drive through artillery fire, then what excuse do they have for not doing their job? You know what's wild? Most people watch the film, see George C. Scott in the pearl-handled revolvers, and think they know Patton. But you're still here. which tells me you're someone who actually cares about understanding these men properly, not just as characters in films, but as human beings who did things that seem absolutely insane by any reasonable standard. That's exactly why this channel exists. We're building a community that refuses to let the real stories get buried under Hollywood mythology. If that sounds like something you want to be part of, subscribe. Now, let me tell you about the day Patton decided to shoot back at a sniper while standing up in his Jeep. November 1944, near Metz. Patton's Jeep is driving through a recently captured town when sniper fire erupts. The driver hits the brakes. Bullets ping off buildings around them. "Get down, sir," the driver shouts. Patton stands up in the Jeep instead. "Where are you?" he roars at the unseen sniper. "Show yourself, you son of a bitch!" He draws one of his revolvers and fires several shots towards a building where he thinks the sniper is hiding. "Sir, get down!" More shots ring out. One bullet passes so close to Patton's head that his aide, riding in the back seat, later swears he saw the general's hair move. Patton doesn't duck. He fires again, then shouts towards the building, in German, "You missed, you bastard! Try again!" American infantry, hearing the commotion, converge on the building and capture the sniper, a teenage boy, terrified, who surrenders immediately. "Why didn't you take cover?" the aide asks Patton afterwards, his hands still shaking. "Because fear is contagious," Patton replies calmly. "If I show fear, my men will fear. If I show courage, even reckless courage, they'll be courageous. But sir, you could have been killed." Patton shrugs. "Every man at the front could be killed. I won't ask them to face danger. I'm not willing to face myself." Later that day, word spreads through Third Army. Patton stood up during a sniper attack and shot back with his pistol. German intelligence receives the report and files it under unconfirmed. Sounds impossible. But it's not the only impossible thing Patton does. October 1944, Eastern France. A Sherman tank from 4th Armoured Division breaks down on a muddy road. The crew is working frantically to fix it. They're exposed, vulnerable. A jeep pulls up. The tank commander, Sergeant Tom Rivera, assumes it's a mechanic coming to help. Instead, an older man in a plain field jacket gets out. "What's the problem?" "Thrown track, sir. We're working on it." "Let me see." The man walks around the tank, examining it with the eye of someone who knows armour intimately. "You're doing it wrong. Come here, I'll show you." For the next 20 minutes, the man works alongside Rivera's crew, helping repair the track. He's knowledgeable, efficient, clearly familiar with Sherman maintenance. Only when the track is repaired and the tank is ready to move does Rivera notice the revolvers. "Sir, are you—" "Get this tank back in the fight." "Sergeant," Patton says, already heading back to his jeep. "We've got Germans to kill." He drives off before Rivera can say anything else. "Did General Patton just help us fix our tank?" Rivera's driver asks in disbelief. "Yeah," Rivera says slowly. "Yeah, he did." The story spreads through 4th Armoured Division within hours. The old man isn't just commanding from behind a desk. He's out there in the mud, fixing tanks alongside his men. Morale, already high, skyrockets. We've talked about Patton appearing at the front, standing under fire, even fixing broken tanks himself. But here's what you need to understand. This wasn't occasional. This was constant. German intelligence files, declassified after the war, showed they received reports of Patton at forward positions nearly every single day. And they couldn't believe it. They kept marking reports as unconfirmed because it seemed impossible that an American general of his rank would behave this way. But it was real. All of it. And in a moment, I'm going to show you the classified German assessment of Patton, written by officers who were terrified of him not because of his tactics, but because he did things generals weren't supposed to do. But first, there's one more story you need to hear, because whilst everything we've discussed shows Patton's courage, there's one moment that shows his humanity, and it's not what you'd expect. September 1944, a field hospital behind the lines. Patton visits wounded soldiers regularly. It's one of the few times he's predictable. He insists on seeing every wounded man from Third Army, talking to them, thanking them for their service. Today, he's visiting a tent full of men with serious injuries, amputations, severe wounds, burns. He moves from bed to bed, talking quietly with each soldier. "Where are you from, son?" "Texas, sir." "Good state. You're going home soon. They'll fix you up, and you'll have a hell of a story to tell." He stops at a bed where a young private, maybe 19, has lost both legs below the knee. The private won't meet his eyes. He stares at the ceiling, his face empty. Patton sits on the edge of the bed. "What's your name?" "Anderson, sir." "Look at me, Anderson." The private slowly turns his head. "You think your life is over," Patton says quietly. "You think you'll never be whole again." Anderson's eyes fill with tears. He nods. "You're wrong," Patton says firmly. "You lost your legs, but you didn't lose your mind. You didn't lose your courage. You didn't lose your worth as a man." He leans closer. "I've seen men with all their limbs who have no courage, and I've seen men who sacrificed everything who have more courage in their little finger than most people have in their whole bodies. You're one of the latter." His voice drops lower. "You fought. You bled. You gave more than most people will ever give for anything. That makes you a hero, legs or no legs." Tears stream down Anderson's face. "Thank you, sir." Patton stands, his own eyes wet. He salutes the private. "Thank you, soldier, for your service, for your sacrifice." He leaves the tent quickly. His aide sees him wipe his eyes before composing himself. "He cries?" the aide asks a medical officer later. "Every time," the officer replies. "He puts on a hard face for the troops, but when he sees what war costs them, it breaks him, and then he goes back to the front even harder, trying to end it faster so fewer men have to suffer." This is the part of Patton that doesn't fit the mythology. The hard-charging general who stood under sniper fire also sat beside wounded boys and cried for what they'd lost. The man who seemed fearless on the battlefield was haunted by what he asked his men to endure. And that's perhaps why he kept going to the front, not just to inspire them, but because he couldn't bear to command from safety whilst they suffered. March 1945. The Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen, the last standing bridge across the Rhine. American forces captured it intact, and now there's a race to get as many troops across as possible before the Germans destroy it. Patton arrives at the bridge and immediately walks onto it. Despite warnings that the Germans are attempting to collapse it with artillery and airstrikes. "Sir, the bridge could fall at any moment," an engineer warns. "Then I'd better hurry," Patton replies, walking to the middle of the bridge. He stands there, looking across the Rhine into Germany, whilst artillery shells explode in the water around him. Soldiers crossing the bridge stare in disbelief. Their commanding general is standing on the most dangerous piece of real estate in Europe, completely exposed, seemingly unconcerned. Patton reaches the far side, steps onto German soil, and does something that becomes legendary. He unzips his fly and urinates into the Rhine River. "I've been waiting to do that for years," he announces to the shocked soldiers nearby. Then he walks back across the bridge, still under fire, gets in his jeep and drives away. The story spreads like wildfire. Within days, every soldier in Third Army has heard it. Patton pissed in the Rhine while standing on a bridge the Germans were actively trying to destroy. "He's absolutely insane," one soldier says admiringly. "Yeah," his buddy agrees, "but he's our kind of insane." It's a moment of pure theatre, pure Patton, defiant, reckless, memorable. The kind of thing soldiers tell their grandchildren decades later. But here's what matters. Whilst Patton was doing this, standing exposed on a bridge under fire, every soldier crossing that bridge saw him. They saw their commanding general sharing the danger, not watching from a safe distance, not studying reports at headquarters, right there with them. And when they saw that, they believed they could do anything. That's leadership. Not the textbook kind taught at military academies, the visceral kind that makes men follow you into hell because they know you'll be there beside them. December 1944, Battle of the Bulge. A German major captured during the breakthrough to Bastogne is being interrogated. "You knew Patton was coming?" the American interrogator asks. "We suspected. We knew Third Army was in the region." Did you know Patton personally commanded the lead elements? The major looks sceptical. Generals don't command lead elements, they command from headquarters. The interrogator slides a photograph across the table. It shows Patton standing on a tank, binoculars in hand, barely a mile from active fighting. This was taken yesterday. That's General Patton, less than 2 kilometers from your position. The major studies the photograph, his expression moving from skepticism to shock. This cannot be real. It's real. But he's exposed. 1 artillery shell, 1 sniper, and the American Third Army loses its commander. He doesn't seem to care. The major shakes his head slowly. We were told American generals were soft, that they commanded from safety whilst their men died. We were told they had no understanding of the battlefield. He looks up at the interrogator. We were told wrong, weren't we? About Patton? Yeah, you were told very wrong. The major sits back in his chair. No wonder we're losing. After the war, captured German intelligence files revealed something extraordinary. German commanders were absolutely terrified of Patton. Not just respectful, not just wary, genuinely terrified. A classified German military intelligence report from April 1945, assessment of General George Patton. Tactical abilities, exceptional, perhaps the finest American commander of mobile warfare. His understanding of armoured operations rivals that of our best panzer generals. Strategic thinking, aggressive to the point of recklessness. However, his aggression frequently succeeds where caution would fail. Leadership, extraordinary. His men will follow him anywhere, attempt any mission, endure any hardship. Personal behaviour, incomprehensible. The report continues. Patton regularly appears at forward positions with minimal security. He exposes himself to enemy fire unnecessarily. He takes personal risks that no general of his rank should take. This should be a weakness we can exploit. However, his unpredictability and minimal signature make targeting him nearly impossible. By the time we identify his location, he's already moved. Moreover, his frontline presence inspires his troops to levels of performance we cannot match. American soldiers believe their commander shares their danger, and they fight accordingly. The recommendation: Patton is Third Army's greatest asset and greatest liability. However, we cannot exploit the liability because we cannot predict or locate him. Secondary recommendation: do not engage Third Army if alternative options exist. Under Patton's command, American forces demonstrate capability and morale beyond standard expectations. And then a personal note at the end, written in the margin by a German officer. If German generals demonstrated 1/10 of Patton's personal courage and frontline leadership, this war might have ended differently. Think about that. A German officer fighting against Patton, wishing his own commanders had Patton's courage. After the war, captured German generals were asked which Allied commander they feared most. Almost unanimously, they answered Patton. Not Montgomery, not Eisenhower. Patton. Not because of his tactics, though those were brilliant, not because of his aggression, though that was relentless, but because he was unpredictable. Because he appeared where generals weren't supposed to be, because he did things generals weren't supposed to do, and because his men would follow him anywhere, through fire, through mud, through hell itself, because he never asked them to go anywhere he wouldn't go first. That's not a general, German officers said when shown photographs of Patton at the front, standing under fire, fixing tanks, walking across bridges whilst artillery tried to kill him. They were wrong. That was exactly what a general looked like. At least, that's what Patton's version of a general looked like. And it terrified the Germans more than any tank or artillery barrage ever could, because you can defend against weapons, but you can't defend against a commander who refuses to be predictable, refuses to stay safe, and refuses to lead from anywhere except the front. December 1944, Third Army Headquarters. Patton's Chief of Staff, General Gay, confronts him after yet another unauthorised trip to the front. "Sir, you can't keep doing this. Watch me. If something happens to you, if something happens to me, you'll take command. Third Army will continue. That's not the point, sir. You're too valuable to risk. I'm a soldier, Patton snaps. Soldiers go where the fighting is. That's the whole goddamn point. Gay tries a different approach. Sir, the men need you alive. Your strategic thinking, your leadership. The men need to know their commander shares their danger, Patton counters. They need to know I'm not sitting in a chateau sipping champagne whilst they die in muddy foxholes. No one thinks that. Everyone thinks that about generals, Patton says, unless you prove otherwise, which I do, every day, by going to the front and seeing what they see, facing what they face. He softens slightly. I know you're trying to protect me, Gay. I appreciate it. But I can't lead men from behind a desk. I won't. Gay sighs. He knows he's lost this argument again. At least take more security with you. I take enough. You take a driver and maybe one aide. That's not enough. It's plenty. Too much security makes me a target. An unmarked jeep with an old man in a field jacket. Nobody pays attention until they realise it's you. Patton grins. By then, I'm already gone. This is who Patton was, not the pearl-handled revolvers and the blood and guts speeches. Those were theatre. This refusal to command from safety, this insistence on sharing every danger with his men, this was real. May 1945. Germany has surrendered. Patton is at the front, of course, with a tank unit that's just crossed into Czechoslovakia when the announcement comes over the radio. Soldiers cheer, cry, celebrate. Patton stands quietly, watching them. An aide approaches. Sir, are you all right? Fine, Patton says. His voice is flat. Sir? Patton turns away so his men can't see his face. This was my last war. I'm too old for the next one. This was my purpose, and now it's over. You saved countless lives, sir. You ended the war months earlier than it might have ended otherwise. Maybe, Patton says, but now what? What does a warrior do when there are no more wars to fight? He has no answer. Neither does history. Because 7 months later, Patton dies in a car accident in Germany, never finding out what comes after war for a man who lived for it. George Patton was many things: brilliant, brutal, courageous to the point of insanity. He commanded armies from the front, not from headquarters. He shared danger with his men instead of ordering them into it from safety. He took risks that should have killed him a dozen times over. German officers couldn't believe the reports, couldn't accept that an American general of Patton's rank would regularly appear at the front with minimal security, exposing himself to sniper fire, artillery and enemy action. But American soldiers who served under him knew it was true. They saw him standing on bridges under fire. They saw him fixing tanks in the mud. They saw him walking through artillery barrages as if he was taking a stroll in a park. He was either the bravest man alive or completely crazy, one veteran said decades later. Probably both. When George Patton died in December 1945, his jeep driver said, I always thought he'd die at the front, under fire, fighting. That's how he wanted to go. Instead, he died in a car accident on a quiet road. It's wrong. He deserved a warrior's death. But perhaps that was the final irony of Patton's life. The man who spent years daring death to take him on the battlefield was killed by chance on a peaceful road. The warrior denied his warrior's ending. In those German intelligence files discovered after the war, in the margins of one report, a German officer had written in pencil, "Thank God there was only one of him." That's the greatest compliment an enemy can give. Not that you were skilled, not that you were brave, but that you were so effective, so dangerous, so utterly unlike anyone else that they thanked God you were singular. Because if there had been more men like Patton, generals who refused to stay safe, who shared every danger with their troops, who led from the absolute front, the war might have ended even sooner. But there was only one. And that was probably enough. If you made it this far, thank you, seriously. Videos like this take weeks to research and produce, digging through declassified intelligence files, tracking down veteran interviews, piecing together the stories that don't make it into the history books. They only exist because people like you actually watch them all the way through. If you want more stories like this, stories that dig deeper than the documentaries and show you who these men actually were, then subscribe. And if you really want to help these stories reach more people, share this video. Send it to someone who thinks they know Patton because they've seen the film. Show them who he really was. These men gave everything. The least we can do is remember them properly. I'll see you in the next one.